Good evening, YouTube. 7350 here, and today we're going to be cutting metal with a stick welder. Now, I know this really isn't ideal. You're going to want to get yourself, you're going to really cut metal, circular saw, metal cutting circular saw, angle grinder with a cutoff wheel, chop saw, which you can't really see because it's out of frame, plasma cutter, oxyfuel torches, reciprocating saw. There's a whole number of ways to cut metal, but I know that a lot of people have stick welders, and so you're wondering if you can cut with them. And the answer is yes. Now, these are Hobart brand 3/32 cutting and chamfering stick electrodes. It's like $15 for a pack of 4, so they're really expensive. But and the sticker description says, I know you can't read this, but for cutting, beveling, gouging of all metals, including stainless steels, aluminum, coppers, and copper. For removal of weld joints, overlays, other unwanted metals, all position, AC/DC polarity, 100 to 160 amps. Now, as you know, my welder, right there, only goes up to 90-ish amps, but it seems to run hot, because just seems to run a little hot. It might be an inverter thing. So we're going to see what kind of trouble we can't get ourselves into. So without further ado, I guess I'm going to start opening up this box. We're going to pull out one of the electrodes, fire up the welder, get some of this 1/8" plate here set up, I guess, and we'll cut and we'll get some arc shots and see how it does. Let's get her done. Alright, so we're taking these Hobart electrodes out of the package, and they're really expensive. They're like, you get 4 in the pack, and the pack's like $15 or $20. And so we're going to reach around here and turn on my little clutch ST80i, which, by the way, it still works great. I love the thing. And we're going to be upgrading something on it pretty soon, so expect a video on that. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to take a dry run here to show you guys how I thought I was going to be using these rods on these. I've seen people do this before with these rods on YouTube. So I thought the arc force would just be enough to blow this out. Blow the metal out. Turns out, they were using more amperage than me. I'm running 90 amps, and this takes 100, but my welder runs kind of hot, so, like I mentioned earlier. So, what I have to do is actually the sawing type motion, and that, it's basically where I form a puddle with this electrode, and then just shove that puddle out. You'll see in a second here, I'll be demonstrating this. It's when my arc disappears under the plate, like right about there. When it disappears, that's me shoving the rod into the plate. I don't know why the rod stays lit, and I don't care, it works, and that's really the only thing I care about. I'm not an electrical engineer or anything, so I don't know this stuff. But, anyways, back to the video. As you can see, the sawing motion I'm doing, you can already see the jagged cut here. It's not a pretty cut. It doesn't look like a plasma cut or even an oxyfuel cut. Those are prettier than this. I've seen professionals cut with an oxyfuel torch. They look absolutely beautiful. And this is not one of those beautiful kinds of cuts. This is not a saw cut. Even grinder cuts are prettier than this. Cutting with a grinding wheel. Anyways, in this quickie little arc shot that I took, which I think has improved over previous ones, just let me guys know what you think about my new arc shots. You can see the sawing motion I'm doing where I am forming the puddle and I'm pushing it out. Now there's a problem because I'm not using enough amperage. Occasionally the rod will go out if I don't keep it on the leading edge of the puddle. And occasionally a little bit of metal will go back and re-weld, like right there. It'll re-weld it, but that's not a big deal to push out because it's still molten. And you can already see the cut that this is making. This is, you'd have to work to make this cut look good. But what people are using these for is you use them if you got nothing else. You only got a stick welder, you need to cut something, use these rods. They're better than, you know, trying to cut half-inch plate with a grinder. I've tried to do that, it's not fun, because the grinder gets about snapping, you go through like 3. But, anyways, you can see the cut's really jagged. It'd take a lot of grinder work to make this look pretty. But if you know what you're doing, you can probably draw a soapstone line, and just follow that line, make a cut, and then just hit it with a grinder a lick, and you'll be good to go. Now, as you saw, I cut the piece in the arc shot off, but I used my rod inefficiently in this, so I only got about 3/4 of the way to 2/3 to 3/4 of the way down the joint before I ran out of electrode. And you can just hear the forceful arc. This arc is incredibly forceful. It's like a 60-10, 60-11. I would describe it 60-10 on steroids. This thing is just, it's got such an incredible arc force. The puddle wants to fall out, and if I had like 10 more amps, it would just kind of shoot out. Now, this is the effect you get. This is burning one rod. Look how smoky it is. That's an hour's worth of burning 7018 for me. This is after 2 rods. This is like half a day's worth of burning just straight 7018s for me. This is incredibly smoky, and you need good ventilation, which I don't have, and I probably should have been wearing my respirator, but don't do as I say, not as I do. So they're really smoky, and they make a kind of an ugly cut, but, you know, they get the job done, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. If it gets the job done, if it's a workable solution, then it works. Not everything goes perfectly in the welding world. So, here's the cut, and bask in its glory. It's incredibly ugly. You can see where I pushed through. There's slag all over. You'll see it on the backside. You'll see it in the second clip I have. And it's just, it's not good at all. So, there's the backside of the cut. Pretty darn ugly. And, yeah, I've melted the little thingy on my clamp. That's what I used for my arc shots. So anyways, back to the video. This is the second cut that I made with the arc shots. You can see I severed it off. Look at that nasty cut. It looks like someone put a 60-11 weld on either side of the metal. It's like I said before, and like I'm going to repeat saying, it's not a pretty cut, and the slag doesn't fall off like an oxyfuel or a plasma cut. You can just whack it with a chipping hammer and it'll fall right off. I've seen people do that. And not happening with these. You need a grinder with like a cutting wheel. You need to grind those down. You need some serious grinding. But you know, look, you can see where I put it up. The edge is ugly, but I cut a piece of material with a stick welder. Now, while I'm going to wrap this up here, I'm going to put the electrodes away. While we do that, we're going to wrap up. So we unboxed the electrodes, cut, fired up the welder, maxed out, cut. And while it did make an ugly cut, I'm going to keep saying it makes an ugly cut, because it does, they worked incredibly well. The cuts were beautiful for what they were, and I would not hesitate to use these on, you know, whatever job arises, instead of a plasma cutter or an oxyfuel torch, because I don't have either. But, you know, these rods worked great, and, you know, I recommend the Hobart ones, because even though they are expensive, they're made in America, and they work great. Even though you only get 4 in a package, and I was running them kind of cold. But I was running them cold, and I was still able to cut this 1/8" plate. So, anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, rate, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can. As always, 750. Signing off, guys!